Well, hello, everyone. I'm Art Taylor, the president and CEO of the BBB Wise Giving Alliance, also known as Give.org. And it's Cybersecurity Month. So we decided that it might be worthwhile to convene a coffee with colleagues to discuss various issues that charities face dealing with their cybersecurity. And we are fortunate to have with us a gentleman who knows a lot about cybersecurity, and he is going to take us through a presentation and give us all a chance to ask questions and make comments as we need to, so that we can dig into the subject at a significant level. And our guest today is Matt Eshleman. And Matt is the Chief Technology Officer at Communityit Innovators. Matt is responsible for shaping Communityit strategy around the technology platform used by organizations to be secure and productive. Matt has a deep background in network infrastructure, and he fundamentally understands how to secure network technology and how it interoperates both in office and in the cloud. So Matt, thanks for joining us, and we're going to turn it over to you. And I'll just say to all of our guests today, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we will try to get to each one of them before the session is over. Mm-hmm. Matt, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today and talk about cybersecurity. I think it's a very important topic, and there's a whole month for it, but it's certainly relevant outside of those times as well. So looking forward to the conversation here today. And as Art mentioned, I do want this to be a conversation, and so go ahead and feel free to chat in questions, and we can kind of take them as they come in. So just a little bit about Communityit, the company that I work for. So Communityit is a 100% employee-owned company, and we have a staff of about 38 individuals who are dedicated to helping nonprofit organizations advance their missions through the effective use of technology. So we're technology experts, and we've been consistently named a top 501 MSP by Channel Futures, and have received that again here in 2020. So I've actually been with the organization. I started as an intern in 2000 and never left, played a lot of different roles. And so bring that experience in terms of supporting organizations and the technology that is available for nonprofits, and the unique culture that exists there as well. So in terms of what I would like to talk about today, and some of this mirrors a conversation that Art and I had, just last week, but talk a little bit about the cybersecurity landscape to help fill in some gaps and help you understand the threats that are out there. We'll talk about some of the controls that you can put in place at your organization. And then, we always have to make choices. There's not unlimited resources. So I'll talk a little bit about how to prioritize that implementation. And then finally, how to engage leadership. So this is not something that, IT can kind of do on its own, but it's something that does require leadership involvement, leadership buy-in. So starting off to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity landscape, this is something that you probably are experiencing, and then we certainly see as an organization that supports over 140 different nonprofit organizations that represents about 5,000 staff. So we see persistent and ongoing brute force attacks on your identity. So again, if you can log into something in the cloud, I mean, these bad guys can too. And so as we look at the logs that are associated with those cloud systems, we can just see a persistent and ongoing attacks from many different locations for people trying to log in and kind of access your account. We see a lot of really sophisticated spear phishing. So that's whenever you get a message, it maybe looks like it's coming from your executive director or your finance person, maybe your HR person, that asks you to do something, click on a link, buy a gift card, update some wire transfer information. So really sophisticated messages that can kind of sneak through spam filters. We certainly see organizations targeted because of the work that they do. So specifically organizations that would be in that kind of think tank or policy space. We see a lot of targeted attacks from foreign adversaries there. But then again, organizations, maybe grant-making organizations, are targeted for more financial fraud as well. So, and then there's attacks that target vendors. So again, service providers like Communityit were targeted because of the access that we have. So there are broad-based attacks, that are kind of going on all the time. It's not necessarily all bad. There's lots of good security tools that are available to combat these threats. So that's good to have those resources available. And I think it's also very positive that we're starting to see organizations be much more proactive in trying to learn and understand what they can do to help protect their organization. So I think that's been a shift that we've seen over the last several years. And I think, again, evidence, thank you for attending today, but just to learn a little bit more about what you can do to help protect your organization, I think is a positive step. But we know we've got a long way to go. So there was a study that was put out by N10 a few years ago, and it showed that 68% of nonprofit organizations don't have an incident response plan. So that would be something to put in place to help guide them, when they do have a network issue or a compromise. And we also know that breach response is expensive. So again, we often get caught up in the really expensive, high profile things. I just saw that the Colonial Pipeline, I think, spent $11 million to respond to their crypto attack. But smaller organizations are vulnerable too. And so a stat from Kaspersky, an AV vendor, said that breach response for a small to medium-sized business is $149,000. So again, that's a significant amount of money in and of itself, much less for a nonprofit or a charity where you're resource constrained as it is. And so needing to come up with that sort of money to do an incident response is a really significant hardship. And so if we can be proactive and protect against those threats, then you can reduce the risk for your organization. So in terms of what that data is worth, I think a lot of organizations say, hey, nobody wants to bother us. Our information isn't that valuable. Why would somebody kind of go after our organization? But I do think that it's important to recognize that all data has value. It could be a specific, kind of record, like it's shown here, or it could be some other, financial loss that occurs due to fraud. So at Communityit, we've seen recent examples of this related to email compromise that turned into wire fraud. So five-figure loss. We've also seen, gift card fraud, a couple $100. And, while we haven't been able to find a direct correlation between, an organization's system compromise, but we've also seen, I think, a spike in unemployment fraud again. So that's where an employee's identity is stolen somehow, and then the unemployment claim is filed. The state office will then reach out to the employer to confirm and then follow up. And so there's lots of different avenues for fraud like that. And actually, Angie Barnett, who's from the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland, said that there have been increases of unemployment fraud that has gone up over 3,000% since the coronavirus pandemic, and catching and prosecuting the criminals is really tricky. So again, as an organization, you likely have PII about your employees, other information. So all of that is valuable and can lead to, a significant amount of financial fraud. In terms of the overall impact of cybercrime, the FBI maintains their Internet Crime Complaint Center. And so we can see the amount of, both the number and the dollar amount associated with cybercrime. So in 2020, that amount was almost 800,000 complaints. representing about $4.2 billion of financial loss. So again, it's a really significant amount of money that's associated with this cyber crime. And I think that term is appropriate. So I think we have kind of maybe the stereotypical view of a hacker, in their parents' basement, hacking, systems because it's whatever, fun and something to do. But the fact of the matter is that many of these cybersecurity adversaries are, well-funded. They're either supported by a foreign government or a criminal enterprise that has significant resources. So it's not just, one person, in a basement somewhere, but it's a well-funded crime-based syndicate that is doing this because there's a financial payoff for it. So I think that helps to change our perspective, knowing that each organization is vulnerable because we all have assets or resources that could be valuable, could be exploited for profit. So at Communityit, we've just developed this view of how we want to approach cybersecurity, and that really does start with security policy. So making sure that your organization has a good set of controls in place and have a good framework is a great place to start. Once you have that framework in place, then it makes it easier to implement other technology solutions like security awareness training. Again, I think that's a great place to start. You get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of training staff, helping them identify threats, giving them guidance on how to respond when they do find something. So again, training and equipping staff is a great return on your investment because it helps address the weakest link, which is often the people in this chain. Once you're able to deal with those two non-technical things, then it may be appropriate to add in some technology solutions on top of that. And so we look at protections around your online identity, protections around the data that you have as an organization, the devices that you're using, your network perimeter. Again, as we're most of us are in a work remote environment, that network perimeter is very diffuse. Protections around your website. And then if you can do all of that, then it may be appropriate to add in some more, next gen tools or more sophisticated things. But really think about starting with policy and training as the first steps in cybersecurity. So at Communityit, I mentioned we support about 5,000 nonprofit, staff at nonprofit organizations. And what we've written over the last 3 years was a report called the Nonprofit Cybersecurity Incident Report, where we take a look at all the security issues that we respond to as a company and help to categorize and define those so that we are better prepared for protecting our client networks against that. So whenever we started this back in 2018, we recorded 233 different incidents at our client networks. That number has jumped all the way up to about almost 700 security incidents that we responded to in 2020. And I can tell you this year, we're on track to continue that growth. So again, we see the number of cybersecurity incidents really climbing as well. And the big categories that we see here are email first. So, and that mirrors, some of the bigger industry research where most threats are coming through email. So generic spam, which I think we all can ignore, but more seriously, that spear phishing, where I talk about, threats that are trying to get you to click on a link, to update financial information, to do, to kind of take some steps that would, disclose information or provide financial benefit to the hackers. So, we see that as the most common attacks. And then probably then the most serious attacks we see is around account compromise. So again, as I mentioned, because you can log into a system online, it means that the bad guys can do that as well. So making sure that we've got protections on your identity is absolutely critical to improving the security at your organization. And I'll talk a little bit about some specific steps that you can take to help address that. So specifically, as we think about those cybersecurity controls and what policy needs to be put in place, that typically starts with 3 documents that we see organizations needing to start with. So the first really would be an IT acceptable use policy. For many organizations, this was probably created 10 years ago when the employee handbook was last updated. And so it's likely that that's out of date at this point. So Most organizations have something in place. However, it's not reflective of the flexible and cloud-centric nature of many nonprofit networks now. I really would encourage organizations to go through a policy development process and use it as an opportunity to identify all of those IT and information systems that are in use, catalog all the data that is stored in each one of them, so that do you have sensitive information? If so, where does it live? Who has access to it? How is it protected? You can help to answer all those questions. I think it's also a good opportunity to have a discussion around the device status of the organization. Again, 10 years ago when we were all going to the office and working there every day and we had a desktop computer, that may have been fine then. But now, especially with work from home, people need the flexibility. Laptops are much more common now. I know many organizations had to scramble, and so do you have staff using personal computers to access work resources? So again, personal devices accessing organizational email, is that okay? I think this is a good opportunity to go through and answer those questions. What does happen whenever somebody leaves the organization, but they've synced all of our file data to their personal computer? How do we need to handle that? What risk does that present to us as an organization? And it's always good, just to kind of talk through some of those scenarios. You don't have to be necessarily very technical, on your own, but I think it is important to be able to talk through different scenarios and then, identify any gaps that may come up as a result of that. The other piece here would be a data privacy policy. Again, if you're working with a lot of volunteers or donors or other people that are giving gifts, it's likely that your organization should have a well-articulated data privacy policy that talks about how your organization is going to handle the data that you are entrusted with, in terms of, reuse. And so being able to clearly articulate to people that are making donations, if you make a donation, here's what we're going to do with your data, I think is a very important step, and it helps to give confidence to those folks that you're engaging with. And then the final baseline policy that I had listed here is just an incident response plan. And again, in the IT world, when we talk about cybersecurity, you often hear this phrase of, it's not if you're going to have a network compromise, but when. And so thinking about it from that perspective, I think reframes things a little bit. And so you need to know how your organization is going to respond when you do have a breach, when your system does get hacked. And this document, again, doesn't need to be long necessarily, but it should be thorough, and you should talk through it, maybe even do some scenario analysis, or what we call the tabletop exercise, to say, what happens if our donor database gets compromised? Like, who do we need to talk to? Who do we need to notify? What role do the various departments need to play? And again, this is something where this is not just IT's responsibility. Your IT department will probably have a role, or if you have an outside IT vendor, they will certainly have a role, in carrying out that incident response. But your communications team might need to be involved to put out news releases or press releases. Your development team needs to be involved to help manage the response to your constituents. So again, those incident response plans are, can be multi-step. They don't need to be very complicated, but it's very important to have something in place before you have an incident, so that you're able to respond thoroughly and completely, as opposed to trying to invent this all on the fly, when you do have an issue. Talking a little bit about cybersecurity and training, I think, like I said, this is a great return on your investment if you can invest in your people as it relates to cybersecurity training. At Communityit, our standard approach is for staff to go through one, quote unquote, large annual training. We use an online training portal called KnowBe4. And so we're able to use some online training resources, again, maybe a 20 or 30-minute online system to go through that. Then we are doing monthly phishing tests. So again, if you can test your staff on a monthly basis to kind of see how folks are doing. And then we are doing quarterly micro trainings. So again, maybe a 5-minute quiz, a little game, something interactive, because we just want cybersecurity to be front of mind. We don't want it to be, once a year, everybody goes in the conference room and, 3 hours later you emerge, but we want to have it smaller, more bite-sized, more focused, so that it's something it's in staff's front of mind, all the time, as opposed to something we really only think about, once a year. And then again, at many organizations, there's always a few people that maybe need a little extra support. And through some of these online training resources, you're able to identify who are the people that are clicking on the most, the links when they shouldn't be. Maybe we need to provide them with some additional training and support so that they're able to educate themselves around the threats that are out there. And then the final piece is really talking about the technology tools that you can have in place. And I think these are typically divided up into, kind of 3 top level categories. So protections around your identity and digital account management, protections around your data, and then protections against your device. So again, on identity, we're really talking about that account that you're using to log into systems. So, and the best thing that you can do to protect that account is to enable multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication combines something that which is your password, along with something you have. And so that it's typically going to be, an app on your smartphone, so that whenever you log in, you type in your password, and then your phone buzzes to say, oh, we're detecting a login. Is that you? And you can press approve or type in a code. So that's a great example of how to protect your account, because, we know that passwords are getting compromised with some regularity. And so if you can prevent the bad guy from getting, they may be able to get your password, but it's very unlikely that they're going to get your password and your phone as well. So protecting your account with multi-factor authentication is really one of the best things that you can do for your digital identity. And then there's also some tools that you can use to help manage all of those accounts. I know that with everything being on the cloud, there's so many different passwords to remember. And so that's why I like to use a password manager. So I use LastPass. There's a number of other products out there, Dashlane, 1Password, where you can generate unique and secure passwords, store them in an app, and then they will be auto-filled whenever you go into a different website. So that's the most important thing. Each password that you use should be unique for each different system. And so using a password manager is really a great way to handle that. I think there was a question that came in as part of the the registration that said, hey, what about using my the password manager or the built-in password save feature in my web browser? Can I do that? Is that more secure? I think it can be a good option. It's certainly convenient to have the passwords saved in your browser. I do think that there's probably a little bit of policy work or to think about it as an organization. Do you want to have your organization's passwords saved in a user's kind of personal web browser that may be accessible whenever they're logging in on their home computer? Or do you want to have a little bit of a separation? So again, maybe their work accounts are stored in a password manager. If you're using that, password manager in Chrome or Safari for personal sites, maybe that's okay. So I think the most important thing is that you just want to stay away from a situation where you are reusing the same passwords in many different sites. That's a very bad practice. Or you have some sort of a pattern that you're using where you're incrementing it by one or something like that. So choosing new unique passwords for every site that you go to really improves your security, because when one system's compromised, that's not going to lead to a compromise at other locations. When we think about protecting data, then we think about some maybe old school techniques of backup. So I think that's one of the things that we've lost in the transition to the cloud, is that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't really think about it. But it's likely that the vendor that you're using for your cloud storage isn't protecting it in a way that you maybe would assume it is. So again, it's important to understand how the vendor that you're using is protecting data. If a file is deleted or corrupted or encrypted, what are your options for getting that back? And so I would tie that back to your organization policy. How long do you need to retain data? If somebody leaves the organization, delete some files, uh, are you going to be able to detect that within 30 days? Or do you need to be able to go back longer than that if you ever needed to recover data? So again, being clear about where your data is, who has access to it, and what protections are in place, I think is a key piece associated with data protection. I would also add in, just kind of basic permission structure and permission management as a key piece of data protection. Again, because we've got all this data in the cloud and it's all really available, it's important to understand the security roles and permissions that people have. So again, if you have a Salesforce database or something that's storing information about all of your volunteers, and you're using volunteers to help service some of those members, what information do they need to do their job? Not everybody necessarily needs to have access to everything. They should only have access to what they need to do their job. So again, being critical about what data is accessible to who is an important step of data protection. And then finally, around data protection, I would really say kind of encryption is a newer standard that we're seeing implemented with more regularity. So again, encryption would be protecting the hard drive on your computer so that if your computer is lost or stolen, whoever grabs it is not going to be able to get into your hard drive and see all the data that's there. So again, that drive is encrypted, and then it requires a unique password or something to decrypt it so it's available. So between backing up data, having good security practices in place in terms of access to information, and then protecting data when it's stored at rest on your computer, really are very important steps to ensuring the security of that data. And then finally, we'll talk about device protection. And again, this may be, seem like kind of basic information, but updating your computer is a very important security control. Art and I talked about this, during our conversation, but, rebooting your computer once a week to let all of those patches complete their installation, restarting your computer is a very important piece about keeping your device secure. There's always security vulnerabilities that are being discovered and released, and then the software manufacturers are patching them and pushing out updates. And so it's a little bit of a never-ending loop. But as you are being proactive about security, being attentive to those updates, installing them, restarting them on your computer, maybe having that done, at the end of the day on Friday, just restart your computer as opposed to closing out the lid on your laptop. Make sure that those updates are installed on your device. And then in addition to installing the updates, having a good quality antivirus program installed as an additional layer of protection. So again, with all of this, there's really layers to the to the security that we're talking about. There's not a just one thing that you can do, but it really does require multiple steps to add together in order to provide that layer of security to protect against all the different things that are out there. So if you've been with me so far and you've been nodding your head and saying, yes, I've got updates, I've got patching, I've got policy, I've got backup, that's great. There's more that can be done. I think security is a kind of a growing and evolving world. And so if you've gotten all that stuff done, then the other things that you can do would be look at maybe getting an outside perspective on how things are set up and configured. So again, that could be some sort of a gap analysis that looks at your policies and procedures. Again, if you're a larger organization and you've got well-defined systems in place, having a gap analysis may be appropriate. You may have a technical review of those configurations. So again, a vendor may come in and do some scans to take a look at the configurations, log in, to your systems and do a review there, or it may be as significant as a penetration test. So that's when a company would come in and essentially pretend to be a hacker and try to hack into your systems. And that could give you some additional insight that you wouldn't necessarily get just through some of those other reviews. We're also talking about going from basic antivirus to some new technologies called endpoint detection and response. And so again, these are more sophisticated endpoint solutions that can look for not only malicious files that are most typically associated with viruses, but some newer techniques that may be run on your computer. It's called fileless malware or other scripted attacks, where it's really hard for antivirus software to detect. But there's some new solutions out there that are able to identify and block those systems or as they occur. And then finally, I would say being able to monitor and verify everything is kind of that key piece of technology. There's lots of different disparate systems that are out there, and so if you're in a position where you've been able to check off a lot of the boxes that we've talked about so far, being able to roll up all of that reporting so that you're able to have one place where you can look at all the sign-in logs for your staff and all the different systems they're using. You can feed in information from those endpoint detection response systems. That really helps your monitoring team be able to identify and see what's going on. Because what we know that in cybersecurity, it's really the weakest link will get exploited, and so it's important to invest in all of those basics before you move up the chain and want to spend more on additional tools. So again, you need to really make sure that the foundation is covered before you can move on and really get value from some of these other sophisticated things. So I would be, remiss if I didn't really talk about the impact that organizational culture has in all of this. So I think it's important for folks to understand your organization's tolerance for risk and what needs to be protected in the context of what can be allowed. So again, what I mean there is, every organization is different. They operate, differently, and the cybersecurity controls you put in place really needs to flow into how your organization works. We have some organizations where they're very competitive, and so they like to actually display the security awareness training stats. They like to say who's clicking on those links, and so that's kind of how their culture works, and they've made it more of a game and interactive. We have other organizations that are a little bit more conservative and staid, and so they will approach it with a little bit more seriousness. But I think each of these controls needs to be done within the context of the organization. So you can't I think just drop a control in place and expect it to work without understanding how it's deployed and supporting those users in that change. So I think in summary, whenever we're talking about getting started with cybersecurity, what are those things that you need to be have in place at your organization? It really does start with IT policy, followed by security awareness training, talking about patching for both the operating system and any third-party applications that you have on your computer, protecting with antivirus, making sure that your data is backed up, enabling multi-factor authentication on those accounts. And again, we have accounts at many different systems, and so that could mean that you've got multi-factor authentication on your Office 365 account and your Dropbox account and Google, anything that you can log into online should also have that multi-factor authentication in place. You can have a password manager to help manage some of that access. And then the final piece that we've added in here is kind of a baseline control, is really protection against that spam filtering or business email compromise. So again, most people can ignore those unwanted messages, the Viagra ads, that kind of junk, but people really get upset whenever they see a message that looks like it's coming from their boss or their finance director asking them to do something. So investing in a targeted and sophisticated tool that's able to protect against that again, really helps out a lot. And I think it makes, gives people a little bit more confidence in the tools that are deployed. So it's kind of a long list. And so again, if you can only do 3, these are the things that I would suggest that you do. I harp on it, kind of again and again, but multi-factor authentication is really, the best protection that you can have to protect your online identity. I'm going to see if I have a link here that I can chat out that that includes some information about that on our website. So again, Communityit, we've got some training resources that we have developed on our YouTube channel. And so you can go to that site and we've got some resources that will walk you through that multi-factor authentication, also some training and other resources. So again, I'll see if I can chat those links out here during the Q&A time, just to provide some additional resources. Also, again, security awareness training. Again, there are lots of different options out there. You can do it yourself. You can do it for free. We use an online tool called KnowBe4. And it's, again, relatively affordable, about $20 a user per year. And that will give you all the online training resources. And then finally, I talked about that business email compromise protection that protects against spear phishing. It also does some great alerting and notification if an account is compromised. You'll get that notification immediately if there's a strange login from a new location or a new rule is created. We'll see that, and it'll alert your IT admins, and so they can respond much more quickly than just kind of relying on other indicators. And again, the reason we say that multi-factor authentication is so important is because it's so effective. So this is some research from Google, where they have done some analysis on how effective MFA is. And so for most organizations, we're really trying to protect against those automated bots or those phishing attacks. And you can see that those on-device prompts are 100% effective, 99% effective against that sort of attack. And I think if we can get there, that's really great. Because from the data that we see, last year we responded to about just over 30 or 32 account compromises for the clients that we supported. Of those, I think 30 did not have multi-factor authentication enabled. So about 96% of the account compromises that we responded to didn't have that protection in place, and that led to the compromise. And so again, it's a very effective tool. It really does work, and we can see that shown up in the data here. Also say that security awareness training, it's very effective. Again, this comes from the vendor that we use KnowBe4. Again, we're seeing these numbers for the clients that we work with as well. So again, that initial baseline, you'll find about 40% of your staff are clicking on links, which is kind of a sobering thought. But the good news is that after training and after that ongoing testing, that number really goes and drops down. So again, in the low single digits, less than 5%. So, it shows that training does work. It's effective. Once you put it in front of people, give them some tools and awareness, you can see measurable improvement in just how many links that folks are clicking on. And each of those things is an opportunity, for loss. And so it's important to reduce that number as much as we can, because from the financial perspective and kind of the impact for your organization, this is a graphic from the FBI that really talks about how that business compromise works, from, getting targeted with some specific information and trying to get people to click on links, open up attachments, have that interaction that would then lead to maybe some sort of financial fraud or, other transactions. So again, those are the only 3 things that if you, need to focus on just a few controls, that's where we would start. So I would just say that, it's important that that organizations, understand that all organizations are vulnerable. And so it's not something that just happens to somebody else. Every organization is at risk. And that poor cybersecurity is an organizational liability. So again, if you have to respond to a breach, again, that $150,000 amount is not unrealistic. And so I think that can help put it in perspective. But it also requires organizational leadership to say yes. So again, IT can't turn the stuff on in a vacuum and just kind of make people do it. It is something that needs to come from the top. And so we've seen that kind of time and again. If an organization says cybersecurity training is important and we do it at the staff meeting and the executive director says, hey, this is what we're doing and here's why, that's great. If it's just kind of done on the side and the executive team isn't engaged or they don't give it the priority that it needs, then it often falls by the wayside. So again, organizations need to have the leadership say yes in order to get these things in place. And I will say that every organization, again, is different in terms of how it's going to be most well received there. We do suggest that people make time for security. For our clients, we work on monthly reporting where we're sharing some metrics back, threats blocked, patches updated, that kind of thing, and then have a quarterly planning rhythm where we're looking at what are the things that we've got in place, what's on our annual work plan, what are the other initiatives that we need to be aware of, but again, making it part of the ongoing planning process of the organization. I think it's also important to know your audience. As I said, some organizations are very competitive and they like numbers and making things visible. The same thing, some people may be swayed by that, $150,000 loss, and they want to avoid that. Other organizations may find that sharing a story or an example of another nonprofit organization or staff person that they know that's had this negative experience, maybe that's going to get them to act. So again, find what works at your organization in order to be able to move these initiatives through. And then finally, there may be some existing compliance mandates that you need to comply with because of the work that you do. Again, if you are receiving credit card donations, that means you need to be responsive to PCI compliance. There's some significant cybersecurity controls that are part of PCI compliance. And so again, if you are accepting credit card, then you need to follow PCI compliance. And that may give you a little bit of an extra nudge to enable some of these things at your organization if you haven't already done so. We work with some health clinics, and for them, HIPAA is a significant control. There's financial teeth to non-compliance, and so that gets folks moving when it comes to cybersecurity control if they have HIPAA compliance. Again, if your organization works with European folks, then GDPR may be a policy or a control that you need to look at implementing because of the data that you're working with. So again, there's a couple of different ways, and we're also seeing cyber liability insurance now actually being a big driver for organizations to implement controls. A couple of years ago, you could fill out whatever you wanted on those application forms and you would get policy coverage and it wouldn't be that expensive, and it was no big deal. But that has all come to a screeching halt. And so just this past year, we've seen renewals really change because organizations now actually have to turn on MFA on all of their systems. They have to have a backup and disaster recovery plan. They have to have all these policy elements in place. And if they don't, they're not even going to get coverage. They're not even going to get a review. And so cyber liability insurance is another area that we're seeing is pushing organizations to implement controls, because otherwise, they're not getting written at all. And so, or they're getting, significant premium increases because, the cyber liability insurance marketplace is really reacting. They paid out a lot more in claims than they took in. And so they have to make changes because things are out of balance right now. So what I would say is, review those results. We talked about all of those different controls that should be implemented, and those would be considered foundational from our perspective. You should have all of those things in place. If you're missing some, it can maybe feel overwhelming, but pick one to implement. Maybe it's multi-factor authentication. Maybe you've already got that done. Maybe it's backups. But I would say, pick one of those controls and find a way, to get that implemented so that you're able to, take that next step and the next step and the next step. There's lots of different security assessment frameworks that are out there. There's lots of things that are going to show you a roadmap, but it's really important that you are able to act. And again, it once you get started, I think you'll find you have some momentum, but I think it's important to kind of pick that one control that you're going to do next, schedule time for that, and then work on the implementation. So I think we have a few minutes for maybe either questions or comments as they've come in. I think there's one here in the chat, but I'll take a few minutes here at the end of our time together to see what questions this may have raised for you and your organization.
Yeah, and Hannah and Michelle and Glenda, Jeff and Laurel, feel free to give us any specific comments or concerns that you may be having or questions that you have for Matt. And Matt, I want to thank you. But yes, there is a question in the chat about Captcha, which is something that's used on charity sites that are that collect donations. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about Captcha, what it does, and whether it is something that is becoming more of an industry tool now?
So a Captcha is often represented as a little checkbox on a web page, and so there's some fancy technology that goes into it where it's easy for people to check the box, but it's actually hard for robots or kind of scripting things to kind of figure out where that checkbox is and to check it. And so the Captcha tool is used to help prevent these automated attacks against online forms, and that could be donation forms. We use it for registration forms. Anything where a bot could kind of test filling in information or credit card, that kind of thing, can be protected with a Captcha. And I think there is a balance, and I think each organization will need to test those things and to kind of see the impact. I think there's a lot of tools in place to help, particularly I think on payment processing, and you may need to work with that payment gateway to kind of figure out what's the right balance, for your constituents. I think you probably don't want to have things wide open, because what we see is that organizations that don't have any gatekeeping or any quality checks on those kind of donation forms in particular, those sites can be exploited by, again, we talked about, if credit card numbers get stolen, what happens is that those bad guys then will take those credit card numbers and they'll try to do small transactions to see if the numbers work. And so if you don't have any controls on your credit card donation site, your site could be exploited because the bad guy could just be running a whole bunch of dollar credit card transactions to verify if a credit card works or not. And so again, turning on Captcha on a donation site, for example, would be a way to raise that bar to maybe eliminate some of those sorts of attacks.
Great. You talked a lot about risk and organizations needing to balance risk against something happening, and yet you also said that it's not whether, it's when. It seems that lots of organizations are going to be hit at some level. Maybe it's essentially the question of how much scale they're going to be hit by. And so these recommendations are really important that you're making. Is there any estimate, for instance, of what charities should be spending as a percentage of their budget to secure their organizations? I mean, do we have any sense of that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that always comes up, like what's the magic number? And I don't know if necessarily there's just one number. I think there's a the consulting answer is that it depends, but I think certainly a few percentage points of the organization's operating budget devoted towards IT and cybersecurity are would be appropriate. I think the good news is that for a lot of these controls, we're talking about, policy or multi-factor authentication, those things don't cost very much in terms of direct dollars. And, so you can implement that, without a big hit to your bottom line or a big overhead contribution. And I think to some extent, some of this is it's insurance. It's hard, and I think organizations are in a position where it's hard to think about spending money on this because it does seem like it's all overhead, and it's like insurance. You need to turn on multi-factor so you don't get compromised. And so I think that financial calculation can be hard for organizations because they're really focused on the mission and the work and how are we delivering services, and so that risk that's out there can be hard to kind of quantify, to say, well, if we don't implement this control, that's going to cost us down the road. But I think as I've said, it's not a question of if, it's when. And so having those controls in place to prevent a loss from happening, I think that's invaluable. And so so having those things in place, again, multi-factor backups, we're talking about a couple dollars per user per month, right? Not that expensive compared to the potential risk that it helps to avoid.
Yeah. Hannah had a question. I guess it kind of riffs off of your point about password protections. And there's this management systems like LastPass. Are they in any way superior to saving passwords on a keychain or Safari or Chrome?
Yeah, again, I think it's probably gradations of good, right? I mean, so using the password the save password in your web browser is definitely better than reusing passwords over and over again. I think what's important, probably from more of the organizational perspective, is that what risk do you have to kind of data leaking out of your organization? And so if somebody is using they're signed into their browser with their personal Gmail account, that account is saving all the passwords that they use to log into your organization's systems. And then that person leaves the organization and they've kind of walk away with all your passwords for all your business systems. That could be an unacceptable risk, or that represents an additional risk. And so if you can say as an organization, hey, we're going to use LastPass for teams for our organization to help us manage passwords, like all your organizational passwords go there. And then your personal account, you can do whatever you want with. But as an organization, we're going to store our passwords here. I think just helps to improve security at the organization because, again, you can kind of keep a little bit tighter control over access to that information.
Yeah. It looks like Jeff has a question about many organizations relying on cloud-based solutions for parts of fundraising, including processing of sensitive personal information. And in light of data breaches at various cloud-based businesses, even those with relatively secure operations that serve our industry, what sort of guarantees can we or should we offer our donors and others who ask us about this as we protect them against this?
Mm-hmm.
As a small, medium-sized organization, it may be even more challenging because they don't have a lot of options.
Yeah, and so I think this becomes almost like a contracting review issue. So you're right. I mean, we're relying on a lot of outsourced systems and processes to kind of make all this happen. And so I think it's important that organizations do a very careful read of the terms and conditions of those agreements to understand, how is that organization handling your data that you're essentially, kind of outsourcing to them. And so using, well-established and reputable vendors to kind of do that work is, gives you a leg up. It's not, I think there's no such thing as a 100% secure system or system that has zero risk. So I think having a good understanding of, how is your data being handling? How are they treating it? What are the protections that they have in place? Can go a long way to helping ensure the confidence of that processing system.
One last question from Glenda is, can you talk about cybersecurity coverage and how much coverage a nonprofit organization should have, or a framework for how to make that decision?
Yeah. So I would say, probably talk to your broker. I'm a cybersecurity person, but I'm when it comes to, organizational liability, I'm a little bit out of my area of expertise. I will say, taking in some of that external information just to understand how much these things cost to fix would be good. So I think you would probably want at least $250,000 worth of coverage. And I think it's important to have that conversation with your broker, like to understand that coverage. What does it include? What would be exempted? Make sure you have a good understanding. If we have a crypto attack, what does that mean? How would this policy help us? So again, I think having that conversation with your broker so that you have a clear understanding, if this happens, how are we protected? What's our, recourse? What resources are going to be available? Is an important conversation to have, because unless you are clear about what's covered, it's likely you've got gaps in your coverage. Your liability insurance does not cover cyber crime, for example. So being clear about how much things would cost to recover can help provide some additional insight into policy levels.
Okay, last question, just as yes or no answer. Should an organization pay a ransomware attack?
No.
No, all right. I thought that would be the answer. Here you say.
The FBI says no. I agree.
Yes. Okay. Well, listen, Matt, thanks so much. Julie's also going to put in the chat your podcast episode that you did with me on a Heart of Giving podcast, in case anyone wants to hear that. And I certainly hope you listened to it. It was quite well done, and you gave us a lot of great information in there too. So, and to all of you who agreed to be a part of this today, I really thank you for joining, and I hope you got something out of it. Send us your comments so that we can continue to get you what you need in these, and help you strengthen your organization in ways that you feel they will be helpful to you. So thanks for joining, and everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon or morning, depending on where you're from.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.